kick off the Town of Hanover Selectboard meeting for Monday, November 18th. Nick, I assume we are up and running? Yep, okay, terrific. All right, thank you. The public hearing and first topic under business requiring discussion, both relating to Ordinance number 23 will be deferred, so we will not be taking up, we will not be noticing a public hearing, we will not be discussing proposed changes in downtown employee permit program in light of some information and questions that have come to light, which causes us to reflect. So we won't waste time in this meeting on that. We'll come back at a later meeting. Are there any items for which the select board members would like to change the agenda order? That's next on the list. Seeing none, let's go to employee recognition. Rob.
Thank you. It's our practice on the second meeting of the month to recognize those employees who hit their 5-year anniversary mark. We have 2 employees, Megan Coleman, who's at her 10-year mark at the Howe Library, and Kristen Gibatowski as at her 5-year anniversary mark at the Howe Library. I just want to congratulate them and thank them for all the work that they've done over the years here. We do have some tenured employees, and it's grateful that we have the opportunity to thank them on these cycles.
Yes, thank you, Megan and Christy, and the others that we are anniversarying at this meeting. We turn now to the portion of the meeting for public comment. This is the part of the agenda where the public is welcome to address the select board. We ask that one addresses issues not already scheduled on the agenda for tonight. We ask that individuals restrict their comments to 5 minutes, and questions will be directed to the chair of the select board. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the select board this evening? David, would you mind coming forward?
My name is David Vincelette. I live at 93 Lebanon Street in Hanover. I've lived there for 40 years with a driveway. I have a duty as an officer, retired Army officer, to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have no choice except to stand up and expose crimes when I know they have occurred. The town has committed crimes against the Constitution, and it's time somebody on the town board stands up. Athos Rassius and Joanna Whitcomb voted to have a fence installed around my house, along with the rest of the selectmen at that time. The fence installation was supervised by Robert Hausman of the zoning office. The fence was installed totally blocking our driveway and fire lane, leaving us in a dangerous situation for 25.5 months. Mr. Hausman seems to believe that he has the authority to punish my family in retaliation for me storing private property along my driveway. My family and those we were protecting all had our civil rights violated by restricting our right to travel. Mr. Hausman never asked me which driveway was ours. He thought he actually had the power to abuse human beings with impunity. He let us suffer for 25.5 months until a court order freed us. Mr. Hausman, Athos Rassius, and Joanna Whitcomb conspired to violate state and federal law, as well as employee rules designed to protect citizens. Because of our blocked driveway, I couldn't rent rooms out. My truck was repossessed, my electricity turned off, our water supply curtailed, and access to medical care halted. While we sat in a concentration camp, Mr. Hausman had our rental cabins at 91 Lebanon Street demolished, leaving all homeless shelter occupants homeless. Why can't Mr. Hausman answer the simple question, did you fence over our driveway and fire lane from November 16th to December 28th? Instead, he points to a court order that freed us, as if that was some basis for where my driveway is. The court agreed that I had the right to determine which was my driveway. I had determined that. In 1984, it was already there. I never moved my driveway. As you can see in the plat, which I've shown you before, but you don't seem to pay attention to, there's a sewer easement that runs across my land. It was agreed to by the Conservation Commission. You can see the line going down through the center of my driveway is a sewer easement. I've been paying my sewer bills since the 1990s. I don't see how you can think I don't have a driveway. And Mr. Houseman had this detail when he chose to fence us in. You can see my home. My home is a renovation of a building that was there for approximately 50 years before I moved there. So that driveway has been in place for approximately 90 years. It's never moved, except Mr. Houseman blocked it. Now, I want to know a straight answer. Mr. Houseman said he was going to answer in writing. Selectboard has refused my questions here for 8 years regarding my driveway, but now you have something that Mr. Houseman did on September 12th, 2024. He misled the entire board prior to being named town manager. Mr. Houseman has lied and abused Jews, Christians, blacks, and remains unrepentant for his hate crimes. And I'd like to know from Mr. Houseman, and I don't know why you can't ask him directly, whether he blocked my driveway from November 9th, 2016 till December 21st, 2018. I'd like you to ask him that question and get a straight answer instead of him telling you about some legal decision that has nothing to do with my driveway being open and notorious.
So Rob has sent documents to you
Yes.
on this matter, on the
And to you,
location
yeah.
of the driveway. That I think explains the circumstances
No,
of
they don't. I've just explained that to you. The court order was something I sought to get my driveway open. The court order was successful. I got my driveway open. Mr. Houseman never had the right to block my driveway. I had the right all along to have my driveway open. It's part of my deed. It's in my deed. You think it's okay for town employees to block human beings from their constitutional rights, and you're going to sit there and do nothing?
David, there was egress from the property.
There was what?
There was an avenue in and out of the property.
Yes, always. So what's your point?
You attended meetings during that time. There was access into and off of the property.
Yes. Not by car. My driveway and fire lane were blocked, sir. I pay taxes that go to my fire and police protection. It's in the deed that Hanover will provide police and fire protection. They didn't. For 25 and a half months, they did not provide police and fire protection. I got hurt and fractured my spine. They were unable to get into the property through my driveway. They had to access it on foot across 91 Lebanon Street through the woods with a litter basket to carry me out. The town has violated my rights, my family's rights, and you all are cowards who will do nothing to help me. You won't even ask a simple question to a board member or a town member now who's a Nazi, who abused my wife, who's a Ukrainian Jew, for 25 and a half months and hasn't had the decency to apologize. None of you have had the decency to apologize for what you've done. You at this restaurant, you've been here 18 years. I've been coming here for 19 years asking for help, and you've done nothing except evade your responsibility and put somebody in charge of the meetings instead of you. You should be conducting the meetings, not telling him how to hide the truth. Obviously, you learned from a master, Peter Christie, about hiding the truth and not answering questions. But at some point in time, you are going to have to answer questions. It's the state constitution. You're supposed to be responsive to people who ask questions. Sons of bitches.
Okay.
What's next on the agenda?
Next on the agenda is the Department of Transportation. Rob, would you like to make introductions?
Sure. I'll invite Bill Lambert from DOT and ask him to introduce his team.
Bob, maybe, and you could just introduce the topic and
Sure.
that Bill has been invited here tonight.
So Peter Kobaki and myself and Bill and his team have spoken regarding the Greensboro Road, Etna, and Great Hollow intersection, and the conversation here is regarding the potential. I think you just hit escape. No? The view on the bottom. See where your pencil is and stuff?
Yeah,
No, down below.
I'm just trying to get the full screen.
Yeah, it's the... One of, at least,
Just hit function F4 again.
function, I think it's F8.
F8 on that one.
Closer.
Oh, that's the green screen, this one right here. That one.
No. No, I screwed it up even worse.
No, that's not it.
Click on that, sorry. Let's hit escape and go again. Oh, wait.
Back here.
Yeah.
I can work on that, that's not, I'm not sure what they can see on TV.
That's fine.
Okay.
So, sorry about that. And the conversation regarding Greensboro, Great Hollow, and Etna Road was how we can improve the safety and use a three-way stop there is something that's now a tool in the toolbox that DOT is putting forward. This is a DOT intersection. They control all three legs of the intersection. And they're here tonight to make this presentation with hopes that they get feedback from the select board as to whether or not this is something you would like to embrace and move forward with. So with that, Bill, would you introduce your team?
Do. Good evening. My name is Bill Lambert. I am the Highway Safety Active Transportation Administrator for New Hampshire Department of Transportation. I have here with me tonight Lee Baronis, who's the State Traffic Engineer, Chris Turgeon, who's our Highway Maintenance District 2 Engineer here in Enfield, and I've got Lila Flynn, she's a CE1 in our Highway Safety Section, and Drew Croto, he's an intern, co-op student out of Wentworth Institute of Technology, who's with us for observation and learning exercise. So happy to be here. The short version of the story as to why we're here is over the last 12 months or so, we've come to a different way of thinking about always stop control, which has had us revisit a number of intersections that we've looked at over the years for safety improvements and not really had a solution. And I think we've built the list from memory, and we've got a consultant working on a broader project, but certainly the intersection of Greensboro Road, Great Hollow Road, and Etna Road has been on our radar for a while. It's an unorthodox intersection, and with that, I'll get into the presentation. Talk a little bit about the background of the intersection and what we've looked at in the past. Discuss the comparison of two-way versus always stop control for rural intersections. Introduce a safe system approach and how that's changed the way we think about highway safety in general, but a lot of our geometry decisions specifically. And then discuss similar locations in the department, in the state, that we've recently converted to always stop control, and then some that we've converted over the last 5 or 6 years where we've got some data behind it. And then certainly discussions after that. So the background of this intersection I think you're all familiar with it, is that it's an unorthodox three-leg intersection. Typically, when you have a three-leg intersection, it would be more of a true T. So you'd have the stem of the T and then the top of the T. In this case, the primary route tends to be where I've got the double arrow, Greensboro Road to Great Hollow Road. And then Etna Road is the stop control. Over the years, we'd have complaints of the operation of the intersection, people coming from Greensboro Road to make a left onto Etna Road that didn't have any kind of control. They were essentially making a left from the through movement, but they almost thought that it was a through movement in and of itself. So we ended up putting a yield sign there. The yield sign probably should have said to oncoming traffic, because if you're making a right turn from Greensboro Road, you don't have to yield to anybody. We've had requests in the past working with the town to make this an all-way stop patrol, but we rejected those requests at the time because they didn't meet the traffic volume warrants that we would normally look for all-way stop control. However, as I said earlier, recent information and experience has led us to implement all-way stop control as an effective safety measure. So like I said, we've had a paradigm shift in the DOT, and it's really based on an article that I saw earlier this year from Federal Highway Administration and the Roadway Safety Network, where they recognized two states, North Carolina and Delaware, for their implementation of all-way stop as a safety measure. Similarly, at the same time, we've had other locations where we tried a lot of other alternatives to maintain a two-way stop, and then ended up ultimately as the last resort going to always stop, and we found that the complaints for those locations have gone away. So something must have happened that was positive. And in this year, as I said, we've converted several intersections to always stop, including the 5 that you see here on the screen. Webster, Dunbarton were the first 2, and then more recently Salisbury, Concord, and Chester. So what did we used to do? We always followed the federal guidelines from the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control devices regarding always stop. And then the manual has traffic volume-based warrants where the major road and the minor road, and it's really considered based on the delay that the minor road would experience if the major road did not stop. There's other criteria in the METCD that would be used for rare exceptions, and again, where we've been arm twisted in the past to put always stop control in, that other criteria is what we've used to justify it. And like I said, the always stop has always been a last resort. That historically, as an engineer, we're told or led to believe that stopping traffic unnecessarily is a bad thing, and you only do it when everything else fails. So when we had these, in the past, when we've had these safety concerns at these two-way stop intersections, we've done a number of enhancements to try to improve safety. The intersection that's shown on the right is Hoyt Road and 132 in Concord, which is on the list that we recently changed. So we would increase the size of the stop signs. We would put panels under the stop signs that say cross traffic doesn't stop. Overhead intersection control beacon. We put flashing beacons on the stop signs, or we'd have the LED embedded stop signs. We flanked stop signs, which you can see in this photo is left and right of the intersection. We would put stop signs. We might try to improve intersection sightline improvements, and then more recently, we've implemented intersection conflict warning systems for evaluation. And that would be a system where there's detection on the minor road that would trigger a warning light on a sign on the major road to let people know that they could expect traffic. So all of these things that we've done have not worked very well, and the definition of insanity, sometimes attributed to Albert Einstein, is to keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So essentially that's what we've been doing for the last decades, is we keep going to these intersections and we make the signs bigger, we make them brighter, we put flashing beacons on things, but we're not seeing the crashes go down. So what can we do different? So that past practice, like I said, had a long list and a growing list of intersections with elevated traffic control elements, all the ones that I just listed, to improve stop recognition compliance, but where the crashes continue to occur. And then we've changed our philosophy because some of the recent changes to always stop seem to have addressed the crashes. There's also a discussion of a safe system approach, which is a holistic approach for improving highway safety, and it recognizes, one of the things that it recognizes, and the principles of it, is that humans make mistakes and that those mistakes should not result in fatal or serious injury crashes. And then again, the national recognition given to 2 states for converting two-way stops into all-way stops. So that segues into the Federal Highway Administration Roadway Safety Foundation recognition of 10 life-saving projects. And like I said, 2 of those projects in Delaware and North Carolina were for the same thing. So when 20% of the national life-saving projects are for the same thing, that gets my attention. So we reached out to our counterparts in North Carolina and Delaware, and we met with them virtually to learn more about their experience. Briefly, I'm happy to go into more detail, but in Delaware, they initiated a systemic project that installed 15 all-way stops in 2021, and then they added 5 more in subsequent years. On average, all types of crashes decreased: the angle, rear end, single vehicle, and others. And on average, frequency of all severities of crashes, including property damage only, injury, and fatal, also decreased. Local roads and collector roads saw reductions in annual crashes, so it's not just a minor road that's getting the benefit of the all-way stop, it's the people on the main road as well. And 12, what was important to me in learning from their experience is that they evaluated the traffic volume warrants of the 25 locations that they implemented, and 12 of the 25, so almost half of them, did not meet the MUTCD criteria. So this is the table in their study, if you can't read it, that shows the crash type is the 5 columns to the left, and the severity is the 3 columns to the right, and the reduction in crashes as a result. So the total crash reduction, of crash type reduction, was 57%. To me is pretty significant, and it's even higher for angle crashes, which is 66%. And angle crashes are where you would get most of your serious injuries. The severity of the crashes, the fatal crashes decreased by 100%, but that's 1.67 crashes per year to 0. So it's not a big number, but it's 100. They have not had fatal injuries or fatal crashes at any of the 25 intersections. And the injury crash is reduced by 82%. So those 2 numbers, at 82% and the 66%, to me are pretty significant. Similarly, in North Carolina, they studied 50 intersections, 4-leg intersections converted to two-way stop control, from two-way stop to all-way stop control. They saw 68% reduction in total crashes and 77% reduction in fatal and injury crashes. And what's significant to me, as somebody who's managing public funds, is that the benefit to cost ratio, and in our highway safety program, we try to get a benefit to cost ratio of at least 1. So that if we're going to spend money to fix an intersection, we want to get at least that value in the reduction in crashes. And the benefit to cost ratio for these all-way stop intersections is 83-1. And that's based on an assumption of $20,000 per location. And as the folks in the room that implemented the ones we've done in New Hampshire will tell you, we haven't spent $20,000 in those locations. So our benefit to cost ratio arguably could be a lot higher than that. They also found in North Carolina that where there's a demonstrated safety problem and a pattern of crashes at an intersection, all-way stop should be considered. And I've talked to folks in North Carolina several times since this time in some of the meetings that we've had, and they, to a person, will say that that's their first option. Before roundabouts and all the other sexy things that we think are going to save crashes, they look to things like all-way stop because it's so effective and it's so reasonably cheap, I suppose. I don't like to use the word cheap, but it's inexpensive. A couple things from the information that they shared with us that I thought were relevant to this discussion is the slide on the left is kind of an indication of where we have gone with intersections from a public perception perspective. Because a lot of times when we get people complaining about intersections, the first thing they want to have is an overhead flashing beacon. They think that that's going to fix all of the crashes. And then stop ahead paved markings and things like that. And the graphic shows that those types of things most likely are missing the safety target. The next one up with the vehicle entering when flashing, that's the intersection conflict warning system I talked about, or enhanced intersection signing. Everybody wants to fix the intersections by flashing stop signs or bigger stop signs and things like that. But again, it's middling and scattered safety results. So in North Carolina, they found that the countermeasures that they were most confident in big safety improvements were always stop and roundabouts. And when roundabouts have a price tag of upwards of $5 million, an always stop is a pretty attractive alternative. They also developed a matrix of traffic volumes where they would consider it. Again, we can't see the slide here, but the matrix has 3 different categories. The major road and minor road average annual daily traffic of 4,000 vehicles a day or less they'll just go and put the always stops in without further consideration. Up to 7,500 vehicles a day that may need further study, and then major road ADT up to 15,000, they will still consider always stop. So keep that in mind for when we talk about the subject intersection. We've been, I think, having so much success with the always stop that we didn't want to just keep pushing on one intersection at a time. We hired a consultant to do kind of a comprehensive always stop control project. This is a picture of a poster we took to an AASHTO safety conference in Houston this year. Part of the project is to do a network screening and identify and prioritize the intersections that we could put into a project and systemically do always stop control. But we're also looking to have them do a problem statement for research to try to see if we can change the criteria that engineers use throughout the country, not just in New Hampshire. Yes, that pretty much summarizes what I just said. So safe system approach. Safe system approach is something that's taken me a little while to buy into. It's a Federal Highway's been promoting it as part of their National Roadway Safety Strategy. It's a concept developed in Europe as a means to reduce fatal and serious injuries due to crashes. It's adopted by the US DOT. It's essentially, it's 6 principles of the approach begin with that serious injury and fatal crashes are unacceptable, and we can't accept that as the cost of doing business. The one that strikes me the most is the principle that humans make mistakes, and those mistakes should lead to fatal and serious injury crashes. For years we've been told that 99% or more of the crashes on highways that result in serious injuries and fatalities are human error, and we kind of throw our hands up and say, what are we supposed to do? With the safe system approach, we recognize that humans are going to make mistakes, and we still try to find ways to improve the infrastructure or educate the public, whatever we can, so for the result that those human errors won't lead to fatalities. But from a DOT perspective, the 5th element that I've got highlighted here is safe roads. That's our wheelhouse. That's what we do. So out of those 5 elements, the safe roads is the things that we can do, and we talked about the always stops as an element where we can improve safety. I feel that safe road users may have the greatest impact because that affects so many parts of the safe system approach, including safe speeds, safe vehicles. A lot of times when we talk safe vehicles, we talk about passenger compartment safety measures. I'd like to start talking about safe vehicles in perspective. For one thing, having vehicles that are going to do 120 miles an hour with people that get to pick how fast they're going to go, you're always going to have people going too fast. So how do we get vehicles to self-govern their speed? And safe speeds is obviously the driver has a choice of how fast they go, and the vehicle determines what the maximum speed they can go. Post-crash care is another element of a safe system approach. I think it's important, especially in rural areas. But if you're depending on post-crash care, that means you've failed somewhere else in the system. So get to the always stop control that we've been doing. So the recent examples in New Hampshire, there's 4 lists here, and we've got more, but I don't need to cover all of them. And I'll go through them one by one as we go through here. So Auburn, 121 at Hooksett Road, from the left, that was uncontrolled before. 121 goes from the left across the screen to the intersection, and it goes to the bottom of the screen. That movement was not controlled in the eastbound direction, but we would get, if 121 traffic was going straight through or making a left, there were some conflicts and some crashes, so we put an island in the middle so we could control that movement, those 2 movements with a stop sign, and we kept the right turn as more of a yield movement. Crashes in the 5 5 years before we did it, there were 6 crashes with 1 suspected minor injury. After that, 8 years, so 3 more years, is 7 crashes with just 1 possible injury. And again, we weren't necessarily doing this one because of crash history, but it was one where there were complaints and near misses. Franconia was one of the first that we converted, Route 18 and 116. So from the bottom of the screen is 116 coming from Easton, going towards exit 38 on the highway. And Route 18 is between the river and the highway. And the 4-way stop that we had there, the issue that we were having there is that Route 116 approach comes over the river on enough of a vertical curve that the driver's first attention goes to the ramps of the highway and they don't see the intersection until it's too late. That was the side that had the stop sign, there was a blinking light, there was flashing stop sign and a lot of other elements, but we still had crashes there. So the 5 years before that changed to all-way stop. We had 8 crashes with 1 suspected minor injury and a possible injury. And in the 3 years we've got data after that, there have been no crashes. Eaton, as opposed to the last slide referenced in Easton, 153 at Ridge Road, Glines Hill Road. 153 tends to be an alternate route to Route 16 going from southern New Hampshire to the Conway area. 153 comes in from the lower right of the screen and takes a hard 90-degree turn going to the upper right. The house right on the outside of that curve has got a guardrail in front of it because they've had vehicles in there living there. So that's one that the minor roads have very low volumes. They don't even come close to any of the warrants. But we put the always stop in 2020. In the 5 years before that, there were 6 crashes, including a suspected minor injury. And in the 3 years since that time, there have been no reported crashes. And then lastly, Gilmanton, 107 at 140. 107 to Laconia's to the upper left, Pittsfield's the lower right, and then Belmont on 140 is to the lower left, and Alton is to the upper right. 140 did have to stop, and 107 did not have to stop. Relatively high speed, while it's kind of the center of town, and there's a store there and some other things that you would think would clue people into slowing down. The 107 traffic coming down into the intersection and coming back up was traveling pretty fast, and that was the most significant change, where we had 26 crashes in the 5 years before we implemented the always stop, and then we've had with 9 suspected minor injury. In the 3 years after, we've only had 5 crashes, and they were all property damage only. So the numbers are hard to ignore. It's very effective at reducing crashes in rural intersections. Leominster is the first one that we converted this year. We walked into a room, 4-way intersection in Leominster. This was route between Keene and Newport on Route 10, and a lot of skepticism. They just wanted an intersection beacon. We convinced them to give always stop a try. We implemented that in April, and then 3 months later, we got a message from the chair of the selectmen that said overall 4-way stop is a huge success, and we appreciate the help from all parties. So that was good from our perspective because we walked into a room with some skeptics, and they accepted it to give it a try, and then came back 3 months later and said it was successful. Dunbarton, that's a project that's in our 10-year plan to put an intersection improvement of some measure in there, but the police chief reached out to us July 5th, which remember was a Friday between a holiday and a weekend, and he reached out to me. Lyle and I went to the meeting the next week with the select board. They agreed that always stop would be a good intermediate solution before the 10-year plan project. And then a month later, I got word from the chief of police who reached out to us that they had no reported accidents at Page's Corner since the always stop. And he goes on to say that that was a time of year with the volume of traffic they get from summer traffic that they typically would get quite a few. I will say that not everyone's a fan. This is from Chester, which is the highest volume one that we had. I won't repeat some of the language in there, but this came before the always stop was implemented, when there was a public notice that said that was going to happen. And I got a rash of emails because my email address was linked to the message that went out. Most of them were angry. Most of them came from people that were traveling on the route that was now going to have a stop sign. Ironically, I got a message from the town administrator this afternoon that I did get to put into the slideshow that said that a month or two now that the always stop's been in place, the negative responses have dwindled to almost nothing, and that they're getting a lot more positive responses, especially from the people that did have to stop and now know that it's they don't have to worry about the people going by them 45, 50 miles an hour. And I will say on this particular location, my wife likes to go to a gift shop that's within walking distance, just north of the intersection. So a week or two after we implemented the always stop, I dropped her off at the store and then walked down to the intersection to the general store that's on the other side. So I could walk all four corners of the intersection because everybody was stopping. They didn't have crosswalks, but they could all stop and I could make eye contact, and it was a lot safer. So always stop control for this location, any location, but this location in Hanover. The pros that it promotes safer speeds through the intersection. It requires all drivers to stop, and it eliminates confusion and reduces the odds of two drivers entering the intersection at the same time. Even if they do, it's at such a low speed that they can either avoid each other, or it's a very minor property damage only crash. Slower stop traffic provides a safer environment for pedestrians. It does not require long-term commitment to flashing beacons or other stop sign enhancements. The stuff that we put in to introduce the new always stops usually goes away. The message boards within a month or two, and then the enhancements on the signing go away usually after a year. And it can be implemented almost immediately at very low cost. And the cons, and there are cons, because it requires short-term re-education of familiar drivers. So we address that by putting enhanced conspicuity on the new stop signs and short-term deployment of changeable message signs. And it does introduce new delay for previously uncontrolled locations, which the people that didn't have to stop don't always appreciate. But if you look at the traffic volumes and the three approaches here, from what I've got on our records, it's less than 2,300 on Greensboro Road, it's less than 2,200 on Great Hollow Road, and our records show 1,000 vehicles a day on Etna Road, which is generally an assumed number that they put in to have a value. So it may very well be less than that. And if you plot that on that matrix that I showed earlier, that's well within the range where always stop would be an obvious solution. So the next steps, before I open it up for any questions, if the town endorses this idea, the next step, if the town does not support the idea, then we wouldn't take any action. We probably wouldn't be doing any more of the enhancements. What we found is those things don't have any effect, so it's not an all or none kind of thing. But we think that the always stop would be the correct solution for this location. That if the town doesn't agree, we don't implement it. But the town could pursue a capital improvement project. We're trying to find a candidate location for a compact roundabout. This would probably be a really good candidate for that.
I have one.
And then if we have,
It's not here. It's not here, but I have another one. Just a second.
Yeah.
with
I
local
think so,
support,
yeah. Maybe it's the same one. Maybe.
with local support, we have been implementing these with our own forces, the folks that are behind me, but we do have a project coming up next year, and if the time works out, we could roll something like this into that project to be implemented as part of a systemic.
Bill, would you ever do an always stop and then maybe in the future consider a compact roundabout if you needed to still do that type of experimentation?
Well, let's segue right to the questions. So.
Well, I think
can we-
first
so
let's
hang on one
focus.
second.
Tracy,
Can
would
you-
you mind grabbing the lights,
yeah,
please?
thank you.
I got it.
Got it?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Athos. Sorry.
I'm taking his thunder.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Bill. And yeah, that was a lot of asterisks in that email. Can you talk, what does enhanced conspicuity mean?
All right, that's a term Federal Highway uses in the MUTCD.
Okay.
If you need to call manual and uniform traffic control devices, if you need to call attention to signs, if the premise is that people are missing them, and you need to call more attention to them, you can add conspicuity, things like the always stops. We've got the orange flags that we put on the top.
Okay.
A new panel.
It's a good.
Strips of reflective material on the post, make them bigger.
Okay,
Things of that nature.
got it. Okay.
So like hit you behind, beside the head to get it.
And sometimes a sign to show that you're gonna have a sign telling you that you're gonna have a sign.
The advanced warning signs could be part of it as well.
There's a lot of enhanced conspicuity. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. That's a great presentation. It's, it sounds like initially the town's been in charge of this. This is a little bit like the preacher and the choir, I guess, or but we should definitely take questions, and you did mention the cons.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you had me with one of your first sentences. I mean, I've driven through this intersection. It should be a three-way stop. The town installed a three-way stop on the road, Reservoir Road, going into Storrs Pond and Oak Hill. It's a huge difference, and it's much safer, and there's far less traffic. Well, I'm not sure far less, but probably far less traffic on that road. I think it's
700 left, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, I think for me, you had me sold at the very beginning, so just,
Yeah, I mean, I
that's
would say.
my 2 cents.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah, just, you had
We
me,
have hello.
you had me.
Legislation from Delaware, North Carolina, and Maine I know is doing it, and Massachusetts is now doing it. I've been keeping a list of locations that I've been to. I've been in the department 32 years.
Yeah.
and-
I think we worked together in Franconia back in the days.
Right, so there's a lot of these intersections that I've been through year after year that keep a list, and from what I know now, if I would have known then, would we have done something different? And this one just smacks of why would we have done that then? I mean, if we avoided doing the all-way stops, like I said, unless it was the last resort, but this one just seems to be set up that way.
Well, and I appreciate your comment that it's not always about how fast cars can go through an intersection. And I think the town has historically, or in its recent history, said, hey, wait a minute, we're a downtown at least of pedestrians first, bikers second, transit third, and cars fourth. And this is our extended, compact area, so it feels like the right thing to do, in my opinion.
Other select board members, questions, comments? Jen?
I just really wanted to thank you and NHDOT for embracing the safe systems approach, and I am so grateful for your presentation and all the research that you guys did to bring this solution forward. And I'm also really grateful that the solution addresses speed in some way too, that the design of the road and even the operation of the road has a big impact on speed, and speed is such a big issue when it comes to safety. So yeah, just thanks for coming.
We've got some swag on the table out there with our new
yeah.
speed management mascot. It's slow and steady, it's not a race, so we've been trying to promote that as much as we can too.
Nice. I think there may be residents who have questions or comments. Is that, okay. Could you please come forward? It's
sure.
really for the benefit of the microphone, which is for the CATV.
Oh, sure, of course.
So if you could identify your name
Yeah,
and
so I'm
where you live.
McKenna, and I'm here just representing the Dunster neighborhood. Thank you, as Jane was saying, thank you for coming and speaking about all of this. And so we just wanted, while you were here, and nicely enough, to advocate for a crosswalk at Dunster and Wyeth. And I understand that is somewhat within the state's control. And so just looking for feedback and
Actually,
your
if you
thoughts.
could address
yes,
me. Sorry, yes. Okay.
Yes, that's our concerns,
yes.
and so we would love to hear from the select board as well as Department of Transportation what the kind of status is and maybe what we can do to accelerate that process.
Okay, so that's not the topic at hand, but I understand it was.
Yes, the glue there.
Right, yes, okay. But Rob, do you want to
Sure.
comment on status?
So we've been, NHDOT and the town of Hanover has been trying to work through the issues. We've had several online meetings, Zoom, and email communications. DOT requires us to do certain engineering design, which starts with a foundation survey. The survey was completed last week, and we are now in the design phase. Once the design is completed, we ship it back to DOT for review, comment, and hopefully approval.
Yeah.
And we'll schedule the work once approved for complete installation during a construction season.
Great.
So that's, did I misspeak?
No, that's exactly the way it is. People in this room are part of that review process, so.
Sweet, awesome. Great.
All right.
So I've
Thank you
seen,
for your question.
I've seen several of the faces on Zoom, so.
Okay,
That's great, thanks for coming in.
thank you.
And I will say that one of our delays was trying to land a surveyor. They're hard to come by, and Pete was successful in getting it surveyed, and the survey results in, and the design hopefully will come forward shortly.
Okay, terrific.
Do you need like a motion or something
Yeah, what,
first?
so,
Wait a minute, what are we talking about?
I'm talking about Bill's presentation.
Yeah, WSC.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Any other questions or comments, particularly with respect to the hallway stop control at Greensboro, Great Hollow, and Etna roads?
We had a hand in the back.
Yes, please come forward, and if you could state your name and where you live.
My name is Laura Acker, and I live at 27 Greensboro Road. Thank you for coming and addressing this stuff. I would love if you could also like reduce the speed on Greensboro Road. But
Laura,
can
you address
Yes,
it?
sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Maybe
Yes,
Bill
yeah.
can step down if you want, but.
Oh, no. I'm actually here to read a comment from 7 Etna Road. So it's the second driveway after the intersection, after this intersection, from Ronnie and Ellie Farr. And they say they often can't get out of their driveway because of the amount of traffic, and one of their big concerns, and they've lived there I've lived on Greensboro for almost 50 years, and she was my babysitter, so she's lived there for a long time and seen like the progressions, but a real issue for them is that you can't see the cars coming around the corner there. And I don't think I'm saying anything. I think you guys all agree that it would be great to have a stop sign there, but I just wanted to let you know that we talked to some of the people that live around there.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Laura.
So it's a,
So thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Laptop too.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I think it would be great.
Okay.
Slowing down would be great. It's, Greensboro Road and Etna Road are really residential neighborhoods. I think a lot of people look at them as just like pass-throughs, but there are a lot of young families with kids. It's a very popular, I don't think I'm saying anything you guys don't know, the Dartmouth students. And we kind of feel like sometimes we get forgotten. I think this would be great. I'm not sure everybody would agree with me, but I think a three-way stop there would be great. I was gonna say four-way, but it's really just three, isn't it?
Thank you, Laura. Any other members of the public? Yes, please. And if you could address me, please.
Thank you. My name is Dodd Stacy. I live on Etna Road in the village up near the library. I worked at Creary for 30 years. I've navigated this intersection probably daily for 50 years, so I appreciate the difficulty of it. And I don't know what the accident statistics are. That seems like what we're addressing. What I'm concerned about, two items that an all-stop problems that an all-stop approach might cause. The first is obviously if a vehicle stops and it accelerates again, the local air pollution index will take a bad hit from this. The noise from the vehicles accelerating away from the stop. There are 4 households right around this intersection. Their life will change. Specifically, as you're probably well aware, dump trucks in the construction season bypass Hanover by coming up Great Hollow Road, turning up Etna Road, and out to Route 10. There are 4 traffic lights that way. There are 10 through Hanover. It's a foregone conclusion. The dump truck stopping on Great Hollow Road is on an incline up and then accelerating to go up with its heavy load up Etna Hill is going to fill that intersection with diesel smoke. So noise, brake dust, exhaust, bad scene for the people living there. The other question that I have is when 3 vehicles come to a stop and everybody goes back to their driver's license exam and says, okay, who's got the right of way here? This could be a significant impediment to the rush hour traffic, which again is Etna Road into the hospital and so on, with confusion about who makes the first move. So I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you, Don. So maybe on those points, let's start with the confusion aspect. What is the experience for a situation like this in terms of?
So the rules of the road for always stop, that kind of confusion. We've had this discussion, I think some of the younger people we ask, because we take for granted, person of my generation, the rules of the road, but I think the rules of the road focus has changed. So the Chester example is one where we copied the statutory rules of the road and then shared that with the public so that they could post it on their local social media, so that I think it's a real thing that people forget what the rules of the road are for always stop. I think I heard that there's an example somewhere in town, so it's not going to be unique. But we've seen, even the one Chester was the highest volume that we've done, so I went there the first couple of days after we implemented it, and there was like 2 motorcycles taking it twice, as one vehicle. There were people inching, looking at each other, but the confusion is going to be less speed. It's like the people that don't know how to drive a roundabout. Usually, if there's a crash in a roundabout, they're going a lot slower. I think people pick it up pretty quick, and maybe during peak traffic periods, it takes a little bit of more education than the off-peak when there's not a lot of traffic there. But we haven't seen it, like I said, in Chester, where we get a lot of negative feedback initially. The negative feedback is kind of being replaced by the positive feedback after a month when people are getting used to it. So I don't see that as being an issue.
So, Bill, at the risk of getting my license revoked, just remind us of the rules of the road.
The first person at the intersection has the right of way.
Okay.
If somebody comes at the same time, the person on the right has the right of way, and so forth. So if all 3 showed up at the same time, then there'd have to be a pause and somebody's going to have to go first. But if 2 people show up in any one approach, any of the approaches, it's the person on the right that has the right of way.
Okay. With respect to noise and pollution, any comments, thoughts, experience on that?
It's kind of counterintuitive that we would ask vehicles to stop because we've got congestion mitigation and quality projects that we've been doing for years to reduce the amount of stopping. So I think that's a legit issue, but it's safety versus congestion is what we're looking at. Is the intersections that we're looking at have safety concerns or crash history, and we're trying to address that as the primary concern. And from what North Carolina had said, that they haven't seen a significant degradation in capacity putting the all-way stop, so that they're not seeing the measurable impact on air quality. I'm not saying that there's not going to be a change, but it's not going to. North Carolina at least didn't think it was significant.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Rob, can we discuss next stops in this process? The next steps in this process? Next stops, always stops on this.
So if the select board have the opportunity either tonight or at some future date, take a position on this. If you're going to vote, if you're going to consider endorsing it, it would send a clear message to DOT that this is something that we'd like to move forward with. I do want to make 2 statements. One is I'm one of the 4 houses at that intersection, so I experience it daily and have for the last 8 years. The noise that I hear most often is the Jake brakes on the trucks coming down Etna Road, or the exhaust brakes, if you will. That said, I would ask Bill whether or not there are other locations in Hanover that we would want to look at that fall within the DOT Hanover shared responsibility. And the intersection that comes to mind is Trescott and Etna Road. Trescott's a hard
Oh,
corner.
yeah.
And would do two
blind.
things. It would slow the traffic down on Etna Road in the village, and it would make that intersection safer.
I haven't looked at the volumes of those, but it's certainly one that we can continue to have conversation, and I don't know if I need to come back if we decide that that's a good option. I can probably draft a letter to the town to that effect, but we have looked at that in the past.
And so with that, I would say that the board tonight can take a position on this if you have enough information. If you need more, I'm happy to dig in and provide this. I know that our Public Works Director over 10 years ago made a request for a three-way stop at this location. And because it didn't meet the warrants at the time, it didn't move forward.
And in a rare situation, we're both the same person too. We get to revisit our decisions from 10 years ago.
Are you
I'd like to,
okay with me saying?
What's the sense of the board?
I'd like to move forward on,
Make a motion, Jenny.
make a motion to move forward in the process to establish a three-way stop at Etna, Great Hollow, and Greensboro, and to investigate an all-way stop at Trescott and
Etna.
Etna Road.
I'll second that.
Okay. Comments on the motion on the table?
You know, one thing we could do is we could, in terms of the concern about noise and pollution, we could maybe, see if anyone at Thayer wanted to do some measuring. I mean, I don't know.
Right, that's a really good idea. There's obviously the speed matters a lot. If we can
Address safety.
generally slow people down, the noise will precipitously fall off. That doesn't stop the braking noise, but yeah, there's multiple facets of speed. That's an interesting idea.
So,
Bill, would
But-
you typically have a graduated speed as you approach the stop sign? Would you reduce the speed limit or no?
The location, we have access to, we can measure how effective it is on the speed, because we have access to probe data that we can slice and dice the data anytime for any number of ways. But speed limit is generally not going to be based on the intersection control. That's a separate exercise. I know that the town has a request for a speed limit reduction on Etna Road. I think the study has been done, but I don't know if it's been shared with the town yet. And that's for Etna Road, so the other two weren't part of that request.
okay.
But I think it's already 30 coming into Etna Road, and I'm not sure what Greensboro and Great Hollow are.
30,
They're all 30.
right, but the rest of our urban compact is basically 25.
Right. Yeah, so I have done speed limits for 10 years. It's not my purview now, that's Mr. Baronis, but we tend to follow the statute, and the statute would be the 30 for urban residents, 35 for rural residents. Class 5 doesn't apply, but a class 5 outside the compact. So anything less than that would need to be based on an engineering and traffic investigation. From what I saw of the data, it didn't support anything less than 30 for Etna Road.
People tend not to drive under the speed limit until you lower the speed limit. But in fact, I think they often honk at you if you're not driving at least the speed limit. But these times are changing, and I don't know if we're going to need the New Hampshire legislature to change first, or NHDOT can maybe take a lead on encouraging them. But I think, as we think about how people move around areas where families live and work and play, we really have to get serious about how the roads operate and at what speeds.
Understood. I've got the sticker right there. Rolling steady, it's not nice.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Burns, did you have anything you wanted to add on speed limits?
Not really. The only other comment I had, Lee Bruns from New Hampshire DOT. One thing I just wanted to mention before you make a decision,
Do you mind coming up to the table? Sure.
Yes, sorry. So one other point that Bill is very good at covering both sides of things. I'm usually a naysayer, and so I always have a list of things to mention as like a disclaimer, and I think all of them have been put on the table. The only one that hasn't is that it is, this change is difficult to reverse. That if you implement an all-way stop, you train people that everyone else is stopping, you're stopping too, and then if you change that, and that now suddenly an approach isn't required to stop, that's a harder thing to train motorists. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. This isn't something we try for a year and back off and change it. We really should consider it as a one-way decision. Does it have to be one way? No, but it's challenging to reverse it.
Not as challenging as putting in a roundabout.
Well, and in some cases we implement, well, correct.
Okay.
In some cases we have implemented all-way stop on the path to a roundabout. We have one location that we've been discussing with the town where a roundabout is in the 10-year plan, and we've discussed this as perhaps an interim change until that is able to run its course. So that was the only thing I wanted to add.
Speed limit, I think is what they were.
Yes, the speed limit, again, the data for Etna Road really suggests that decreasing from 30 is probably not prudent.
Can you explain this?
Well, we review it with various criteria. One factor is the current traffic speeds. It is also factoring in access points, environment, context of the roadway. Those factors together really come back to 30 miles per hour. Plus we have the statutory speed limits do specify essentially the lowest that we go on DOT roads is 30.
Can you speak to the context that you discovered around Etna Village and why that it wouldn't be a village-like speed limit of 25 miles an hour?
Generally, when we see the lower speed limits, there is activity, there's a busyness to an environment. Think of a village where you've got on-street parking, you've got people moving about, entries close to the roadway, lots of driveways. That's usually the places where we'll see the traffic naturally slows because there's a lot of potential conflicts that are visible to the driver. Here, it's still a village, but you do have more homes set back. There is some spacing between them. There's not pedestrian facilities, which, chicken or the egg type of thing.
I think one of the things that we're hearing a lot is that people do walk like God to the general store. People walk to the Etna Library. It's incredibly well used after school.
Mm-hmm.
And people are afraid. Someone got hit in front of the general store just recently. And people are also afraid biking there because they're not visible around the turns. And people really want to be walking more. People are walking their dogs, people are afraid to get their mail, and the busyness, while it will not be like Hanover, where we have an even greater population, is substantial, and it is a village center, and it's very well used and loved, and what people are frustrated by is they've seen this gradually erode. So one way villages have reclaimed their essence is by slowing the cars down and making it more walkable, adding some of that pedestrian infrastructure they don't yet have, right? I know in terms of doing like a conflict density analysis, I feel like there are a number of roads that intersect within a pretty short amount of time, right around Etna Village, and single-family driveways, and the stores and CSA. So, I mean, my question is, no one in this, well, let's take a survey. Does anybody in this room think that if we studied any road here in Hanover or beyond, anywhere in New Hampshire, we are going to find 85% of the drivers driving below the speed limit?
I can think of a couple examples.
Okay.
For years, we interpreted the statutes, say 265-62, to say that the state roads could not be any lower than 30 miles an hour, because I think it said within compact parts of cities and towns, and our interpretation has always been that urban compact, the formal urban compact. Probably 15, 20 years ago, we were going to look at that, interpreted that to mean a density versus urban compact, but even then, that was 25 miles an hour. It was at that point that we allowed towns and cities to petition for the statute to go as low as 25 in compact parts of cities and towns, subject to an engineering and traffic investigation. So they were responsible for providing the engineering and traffic investigation. And in the 10 or 15 years that we've had that provision, Tilton, New Hampshire, and Newmarket, New Hampshire are the only two locations where engineering and traffic investigation has justified the 25 miles an hour. Both of those towns have been posted to 25, but they were supported by studies. I sat in a police chief's vehicle unmarked, watched his radar, people in downtown Tilton going 18, 16, 19. So that's an example where that 25 was definitely justified. But the data that I saw in Etna was more like 35 or 6 as 85th percentile, which means that most people, or a fair amount of people, are going quite a bit more than that.
So am I correct in these other towns, those are their main street area? So here we have a village that, by pretty much all accounts from the village, is being eroded by people cutting through their village. So that's maybe a different scenario that bears thinking about, and who lives there.
And I would also, if we're going to, and it sounds like we are interested in exploring an all-way stop at the corner of Etna and Trescott, that will change the dynamic of that area a little bit, because people will know there is a stop coming. So maybe in that context, you start to create that slower area in the downtown urban Etna area. So
one of the concerns that we have, and why we still look at 85th percentile, again, you have to be careful not to let the traffic lead your decisions, but what you are looking at is the prevailing movement of traffic versus those that are following the speed limit. So if you were to set a speed limit to 25, you're creating a greater differential between vehicles. Those that are driving 35 or 40 are not adhering to the 30 mile per hour speed limit, so they probably are not going to adhere to a 25 either.
Yeah.
And so if you are looking at vehicles that are driving 40, and now you have folks that are driving 25 because that's the speed limit and they're following the rules, or in some cases commercial drivers who are obligated by GPS tracking to follow the speed limits, because that's also a factor. Now you're creating a greater differential where folks are moving right along and come up behind someone or are confronting someone. I'm not disagreeing that slower speeds are safer
I just
for
like
all
the
parties.
differential one though. We know that's a pretty old study done out west on open roads and rural environments, and may or may not apply to these situations.
But how do
we know that when we lowered the speed limits, as they have done in many cities across the United States now, we actually see a reduction in speed, and then particularly in excessive speed. And we know that with the adoption of the safe systems, that we are rethinking all of these things. And we know we're doing that because out of the 28 top, richest countries in the world, we have the most fatalities per population, and we're really high up per mile driven as well. Like, we know all this. We know we have not been doing it right. And so I'm just saying, think about the village with the context that this is a village, even if you're not detecting the busyness at every moment.
Right.
And we know this from the busyness of our libraries and the general store and the CSA that opened and the other activity that's happening out there, and from all of the calls that we get about this problem.
I think the mechanism needs to work somewhat in unison, that you need to develop the context, slower the speeds that encourages people to be out, and then that in turn helps motorists recognize, oh, there's stuff happening here, let's slow down. So somehow we have to cycle that and reverse this evolution of increased speeds to a lower speed. The challenge is navigation systems route people for most efficiency. We were discussing how some of the heavy trucks are avoiding downtown by using this route, and so we have to recognize that there are folks that they just want to get from A to B, and we have to somehow create that environment for them to recognize that they need to go slow, even if they don't want to.
And I think the GPS is a really good point, though, because it does.
I do want to acknowledge that part of one of our conversations, we began the discussion about the town and NHDOT trying to figure out a way to transfer ownership of Etna, Great Hollow, and Greensboro Road. The conversation obviously turns on the condition of the roads and the cost of bringing them up to standards. That conversation is in the works as we. That's that. Yeah. I mean, a project. Unfortunately, the funding that was a mechanism to make this happen went away in 2016, I believe, so if funding becomes available, that's an option where we could take over the corridors, and subject to making sure they meet certain minimum standards, obviously, so that we don't inherit the liability of an aging system and then go forward and maintaining it. Those conversations have started.
Okay, thank you. Believe it or not, we have a motion on the table. Did you want to get back to the motion?
I'd like to get back to that, but then I have one more thing after that, but I agree we should move that.
Yeah, let's, so it's been moved, so we're ready to vote.
Okay, you can call it, right?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Jenny?
Aye.
Yeah, okay, all right, terrific, that is unanimous, I believe. Yeah, you had another.
And then, Bill, you slipped in your presentation that, mini roundabout might be something you'd be interested in doing, and I think that, that there are some places that we've talked about with our DPW department, and this isn't the time, but I would like to encourage our town manager to work with DPW and the state, and because I think that there's some interesting opportunities, and maybe right here in the central business district, if you will, and we do have a large neighbor who's doing a big energy project that there's going to be lots of holes dug, so there may be opportunities to do some kind of cool stuff that would be an interesting partnership.
We'll have to find a location.
Happy to talk later.
All right, well, thank you very much, Bill and Lee and Chris and Lila and Drew.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
A quick final
Don,
question.
yes.
Can we access the accident data for that intersection?
Rob, can we access the, okay, is that something
We have it's actually on the bike walk.
Yeah, I found the layer that the Regional Planning Commission did. It seems like they have it up to 2020 right now, and every once in a while they add more.
We can get you the data.
Okay. Thank you. Let's move on now to second half 2024 tax rate. Ellen, thanks for coming tonight. Were you going to walk us through this?
I can walk us through this.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Laura.
Disinterested in already
Yeah.
Do you want to? Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Ellen Bullion, Director of Finance for the town of Hanover. And we completed the tax year 2024 rate setting process with the Department of Revenue Administration last week. And we ended up with an overall tax rate for the town of $17.68. That represents a 3.6 overall rate increase from tax year 2023. In this process and with the town's municipal budget, we tend to focus on the municipal tax rate. And that rate was finalized at $4.64 per thousand. That is a 5.6% increase over tax year 2023, but is below what we signaled at budget time of $4.68. So it's a 4 cents per thousand decrease. And the process really begins with the fiscal year 25 approved budget. And then through a couple of the documents that I know were reviewed at the last meeting, which is the MS 535, which is an evaluation of our performance against budget for the previous fiscal year. And then the MS 434, which is the opportunity for the town to take a look at the revenues that were budgeted for the current fiscal year. And we have the opportunity to make changes to those revenues. And as communicated, we felt that it was prudent to leave those revenues as is with the budget because of some of the risks and some of the unknowns. Now, one of the revenues that comes in really during the tax rate setting process are the rooms and meals and rooms tax distribution. And that's where we saw the change in the tax rate. So our final meals and rooms distribution was $178,000 over the amount that we budgeted. It's always a bit of a wild card. In the 2 years that I've been involved in the process, we've been fortunate to have an increase over budget. There is a scenario where we could see that come in under. So looking at the increase of $178,000, we have the opportunity to either return that to the taxpayers in a reduction in the tax rate, or we can increase our overlay amount, which is really the set aside that would account for any abatements to the property taxes. And so what we've presented and advocated for and what's reflected in our final tax rate is an increase of our overlay of $100,000 and then a return to the taxpayers of $78,000. So that's where we see the impact of the decrease of 4 cents per thousand in the municipal tax rate.
Thank you. Thank you. So, so we added to our overlay, right, which is, maybe you can explain what the overlay is. And
Sure, it's really, it's an offset to the property tax revenue, a contra revenue, and it does account for abatement applications where property owners come and do advocate for a change in their net assessed value. And we have seen year-to-date about $62,000 of abatements. I think that was driven significantly by maybe a handful of commercial properties outside the compact. So, in light of that, given that our original budget for the overlay was $100,000, we set aside that additional $100,000. If it's not needed, then at the end of the year and through the close of 2025, that would be returned to the undesignated fund balance.
Ellen, do you know, is the rooms and meals, is it like, how do they come up with that number? Is it based on local numbers?
No, I can send you the section.
Okay, that'd be great.
It's state.
Right, yeah, I understand
yeah.
it comes from the state, but is it?
Everything's collected jointly to the state and then it's dispersed based on population and some other calculations. And but Ellen gave us a big talk last year about how they often don't even disperse everything they're supposed to. So that's why it's very uncertain. Like, so there
It's a bit of a black
there's,
box.
there's statutes about it
Mhm.
as to how they calculate it.
It is a bit of a black box, but I think, population does come as a big driver.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Don't go anywhere. Unless there are other questions about the tax rate, the next topic is the target tax rate discussion. And Ellen, you put together a memorandum and some math around this. So if we could turn to that next,
Sure.
that'd be great.
So, as I mentioned in my memo, the last year when I was involved in this, the process was a little bit different because we really, went through and took a look at the previous year's budget. We kind of analyzed what would be different. We put some inflation factors on. I think you'll recall that we were particularly interested in the 16% increase in paving materials, and took all those things into account and calculated what we felt was a corridor or a range of likely property tax rate increases. And this year, based on your guidance, we have taken the approach of the zero-based budgeting for our budget process. And that's where really each of the departments is starting from zero and looking at each of their accounts and thinking about what resources they need to deliver the services that the residents expect, and also are basically in line with the priorities of the select board and also following the master plan. So I wanted to come and be able to give you a starting point for our property tax rate increase. It certainly has a lot of moving parts, but what I've put together really is a look at what is the impact of our legally binding commitments through our labor contracts, and then a couple of other contractually required commitments. And of course that a lot of it is in the compensation, but includes the retirement system, Social Security and Medicare. So that was really the starting point. And then in addition, I took a look at, we had some sort of either unusual or non-recurring expenses included in the 25 budget. And so what this initial look, or base case, if you will, is doing is stripping out some of those items and recognizing that that would go basically to reduce our tax burden. And then sort of as the last layer on in non-operating costs is we do have an increase in our debt service. And then, I made an assumption for the capital reserve impact, although, as I mentioned in the memo, that is a little bit dependent on where we land with the CIPC work.
David, I think it's extraordinarily helpful. I don't know if you guys had a chance to go through it. I mean, the favorable offsets are significant. They sort of at total, there's a few puts and takes, but it's mostly favorable. It's about $365,000. And it's the drop off of some facility analysis and the Downtown Business Services District, the child care, the planning and zoning consulting, that all adds up to about 365,000, sort of offsetting other, the increase. But before we get too excited, I know we batted around some things, and this will come up in committee reports, but there are proposals, new proposals that the CIPC has yet to fully consider, but that are significant from the how. That could be, what's the number? It's, add it all up, it's close to $2 million, I think, right?
It is. I think without the DPW studies, I think it's closer to about 1.7 million.
Yeah.
And again, depending on the split of the funding and the term and the rates. But, I did some, quick calculations, and if the town were to accept the full burden of that, and if we were to choose to fund it with a 15-year bond, that could add almost a 1.5 increase to the tax rate. So, there are, again, a lot of variables to consider, but the tax rate, when your base is $4.64, it doesn't take a lot to get those increases. So
there's the how and then the base inflation, other than non-obligatory inflation, but perhaps very real inflation on purchased items, right, that we might be dealing with. I think you did a thumb to the wind, 3%, and that works out to like another 150. So you could be looking at 3% easy kind of offsets from some of these things. How general inflation, I think.
and I think that's fair. And I think the other factor that this calculation doesn't take into account, because there are so many unknowns, but is in the whole revenue realm. Because again, if our revenue drops, that'll drive the tax rate up, because the property tax levy will have to go up. So there are a lot of moving parts, but I think this gives us some guidance and understanding of sort of what drives our expenditures. And again, I will say that this analysis really only includes the general fund, and we certainly do have a tax impact of the fire fund, but this is, sort of a focus, and has traditionally been at this point in the process, a focus on the general fund.
Yeah. And the other tax driver that I know Joanna was excited to want to talk about was the split between commercial and residential valuations, and how that, in the year of a coming reval, that could be significant, right? If commercial properties, which whose values I think have been hurt a little bit, if they go down or they don't go up as much as residential, there's a shift in the tax burden toward residential, so that could be another additive factor from the residential perspective.
But in the conversations that we've had, and what we've seen recently in abatement requests, it's been commercial outside the downtown, right? So it's like outside the central business district.
And the CVS, are you counting that outside? The CVS is right here.
No, I wasn't talking about CVS. I was thinking of Lime Road.
That was even bigger. That was a bigger abatement. And then the other big one was the Lime Road at Red Road.
Yeah. So I think the warning is that we're going through a reval, and when we did this, I guess it's 6 years ago now, it was a really tough year, so just wanting, the viewing public and the select board to remember that, we're at, I think, 72% and that's why we have to do this reval by state statute, but, the market's bizarre in Hanover, and, we'll just prepare thyself.
Yes.
And I think that as we go through the budget process, I think we'll have to navigate how we communicate that, because, to provide a comparison or a percent increase, we really have to start, with the pre-reval, but at the same time, the reality and what people will be seeing in their second half, a year from now, will be those new valuations. And so I think in particular, when we're talking about and when we try to translate the tax rate increase into an average homeowner, I think we'll need to be careful and have a better understanding by that time, hopefully, of the mix.
The shift, yeah. But I think sometimes it's hard that, we're setting the tax rate now for a budget that we approved in May.
Yes.
Right? And now we're planning for that budget, FY26 now, approved in May, and then next year when we have the reval, we're going to be sitting here saying, okay, so this is the number, guys. And so that's when we'll really feel it the hardest, right? Is that,
I think that's
July
when
1,
the
but-
reality will hit, and I think when those bills go out, that's when, again, it will become real to property owners, both residential and commercial.
So Ellen, in light of the approach that you're taking on the zero-based budget, where you specifically asked department managers for kind of different buckets, gotta have, like to have, really wish someday, could have, those aren't, I don't think that's the verbiage you used, but you did have 3 different sort of levels of priority. In the past, the select board has kind of honed in on a percentage increase. I think, I'm looking to your guidance here, or your recommendation, but I think in light of taking the zero-based budget, that would maybe be counterproductive, and we're better off seeing how it shakes out and then thinking about options down the road. Is that?
Well, if I heard all of you correctly, the concern was that when we established the corridor, that it felt like there might be some tendency towards saying, great, the top end is 7%, we're going for 7%. And so we're really trying to avoid that in this process.
Yep.
I think by looking at this base case and understanding what might be layered on top of it, I think as a board can start to get a sense for where we might land even with the base case, and then having a sense for how we prioritize the maybe not nice to haves, but what the must-haves that the departments feel that if under their understanding of their mandate, that they need to have to deliver that. And that's where I think this approach gives us the sort of the view into what's those building blocks. And I think it makes it clearer sort of the cost of those decisions, whether it's the cost to maintain levels of service or increase levels of service or not doing it. So then we have sort of the cost benefit at its very best.
Yeah. Okay.
If we can build that clarity in.
Thank you. Fellow select board members, are you comfortable with that approach? Seeing some head nods. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. Anything else on the target tax rate discussion? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're sticking around for ARPA funds update, or that's Rob, or both of you?
I'll take that one.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
There are
Okay.
questions.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. In your packet, there's a brief memo from me and an updated spreadsheet that outlines where I think we are in our ARPA funds. Running down from the top, the 2023-24 funds, we had a cost overrun of about $26,000 in our communications upgrade or our phone system upgrade. That was really related to our 911 recording system that was no longer compatible with the new 911 or phone system, so we had to make that change. And I think some of you heard that conversation when we were at dispatch. So that's expended already with the $26,700 overrun. EV chargers, there was some confusion as to what the EV chargers were, and my understanding now of going back and reading the memos was that there was proposed EV chargers behind Town Hall. Not the ones to replace the capital improvement project, to replace the ones at the parking garage, but 2 behind Town Hall. I am recommending that we chase an alternative location for 2 reasons. One is I think Town Hall, the parking behind Town Hall is too congested to give up 2 spaces, and it would be 2 town spaces next to the trash compactor where the conduit is, to dedicate those spaces for charging only. And also I'm recommending a change in location because the reality is we would need to put in another transformer. The transformer that is out to our northwest corner of Town Hall is a backup transformer that we are going to jump to once we do the upgrades to the electrical, because the one behind Molly's is failing. So that necessitates a new transformer to support the EV chargers if we were to go in that location. My understanding from Liberty is that's a 60-month lead time.
That's 5 years.
I was thinking, like 60 months is an interesting way to put it.
We're gonna start talking.
60 weeks, I'm sorry.
Okay.
60 weeks. 60 weeks. Thank you for 60 weeks.
I'm just gonna start singing
It's
a
more
song.
than a year. So the location that we're considering and we're trying to get quotes for is the town lot that's a permit, a lease lot out off of, I think it's 6 West Wheelock, behind the real estate office. We have 2 spaces there that we could easily dedicate. There's power there, and Pete's working to see if we can get a quote. I think that works for a whole host of reasons. It's not a it's a lower demand parking space. It's walking distance to downtown, so people could park, charge, and still come into town to do, get a coffee, have a meal, go to the bookstore, do what you may want to do while charging your car. And then the spaces are technically available right now, so I put a hold on those spaces.
Those are like permit ones, right?
Yeah. So I put a hold on the 2 spaces so that we didn't lose them until we got through this process.
Are they gonna be level 2 or 3 or?
Level 2.
How does the I'm sorry, I was thinking 6 months. How does the transformer work then over there?
So there's a larger transformer that exists, and it does have capacity from what I understand. It's utility owned.
Okay.
So they're all utility owned.
But just where they happen to be.
Yeah. So when we plot this, it's partly.
And where our backup one is sort of where we were going to put for Town Hall. Like, is this all a result of that big electricity failure that we had to? I was just trying to connect.
So that failure demonstrated that it allowed us to see the insides of the transformer, and it's leaking oil. The transformer itself is failing, and the electrical supply to the building is failing. So we also learned some important elements about this building and how it's been updated over time, and have committed to trying to modernize our electric system so that our fire alarm and safety systems are on the generator side of the building, not the non-supported side, if you will. So if we ever go into a generator operation, we still have our fire alarm system and security. And to make that move, it's either buy a new transformer, replace that one and rerun that line, or swap over to this one and run a new feed into the building. And the quotes we've gotten are based on that transformer, because the cost and the lead time would put us out of.
I think that Westwood Electric is a good idea. That's a good place for it.
And I did look at all the other parking lots that we own or manage, and from my perspective, this one makes the most sense.
Okay.
I think it's great if you can spend that money.
But
Did you look behind Lou's?
Yeah.
It's another.
It's not public.
Yeah.
Like we own that land, and then Dartmouth owns, and then they lease it to the town. But the main reason I was looking at it was because our transformer is also failing, and Liberty won't pay for it. So I'm trying to, I haven't worked on this in a while, but basically trying to see if I could get, what's the infrastructure bill?
ARPA?
IRA money to pay for a charging station, which would also include the electricity to run to the charging station, which would necessitate changing the transformer and be a benefit to the whole block, because it's not only our building but the one north of us as well. But again, I haven't done much with that, so. But I'm open to it if anybody has any any recommendations.
Well, I mean, I think the way there's like a dearth of charging stations for non-Tesla, Rivian vehicles, and there's no level 1, there's no level 2 or level 3 around here. So, if we had 2 there and 2 like at the hop with transform, I mean, that would be a good thing for downtown, because people would come here and charge in. Because it's not that far off of 89 and 91. So
Some multifamily people on the Slack channels at Dartmouth asking, like, could I get an electric vehicle if I don't have charging at home? Like, is there enough in town? And the answer was no from other people.
there's not.
No.
No.
Yeah.
There's not.
Like there is, but it takes a long time.
Well,
Not as much as using your car.
and Liberty is like totally scamming you if you install a level 2 charger in your house. They're overcharging. I mean, it's insane.
So Rob, we have a clock ticking on ARPA. We have a clock ticking on this
so-
meeting as well.
Yeah, sorry.
So,
Yeah,
So I'll just be,
sorry.
so I've outlined all the projects that I'm, either modifying or changing. I would touch briefly on them. One, I think, is something we want to consider, and I think we hit home today how frustrating the owl can be. I'm recommending that we consider converting this, using the town digitizing project, the first one, to convert this room to a Zoom room. I will say that we experienced a failure with the owl today that I've never experienced before.
For what meeting?
Bike walk. And Bike walk was dynamic enough to pull off a meeting without the owl, but it was a challenge. And so I'm recommending we set aside $40,000 of that, and we're working hard to get a quote for this room. The $40,000 is based on the last Zoom room that was done for the library. It came in right around 40. hopefully we'll have that number and a commitment in time. All of our we have to have all the funds obligated by December 31st, so my plan is to have everything teed up and obligated by December 15th, or moving it toward another project, so we have it addressed.
Rob, why does it cost so much to put in a Zoom room?
So
That's a lot of money.
It's cameras, mics, displays, and operating system. So there'll be two displays here. There'll be a tablet that you would just come in, push your meeting number in, it would launch the system. Your audio would be clear, your cameras would be clear, it wouldn't be the limits of the owl. I mean, we could do it on the cheap, I could hang the owl on the ceiling and
It's money well spent in terms of trying to create greater transparency and opportunities for people to participate.
It's planning board, zoning board, conservation commission,
Bike walk.
Hanover bike walk,
Sustainability.
Sustainability, the energy subcommittee, just to name a few. So I think the opportunity, it would be heavily used and appreciated. CIP, not gonna get that fixed for Friday. Moving quickly through the rest of the list, technology upgrades. One of the things I was asked to do is look at whether or not board docs would be an opportunity. Board docs have been purchased. The new program is more robust than board docs. It appears to have a very simple system on the back end for the user to set it up. It's real-time generation of minutes and agendas and document loading, so it's something we're going to pursue. The expense to the town is $8,500 for up to 11 users, 11 boards. So that's where we're headed. The first 5,000 is the buy-in, the balance is the next 10.
And it could integrate with the Zoom room.
Yep.
Screens and all the rest. Yep.
We did meet with JAM about this room and the acoustics in it and the ability to have a Zoom meeting integrated into it, and it's something we can do fairly easy. Once we have the acoustics addressed, we're trying to get that addressed first, and it's in the works.
Okay.
And part of it is these mics, this type of mic, omnidirectional mics create some problems for us with the speakers and picking up and getting feedback from the speakers.
We have all the chairs that soak up all the noise.
Yeah.
So.
So the jumping down, trying to think of, we are working with UK architects to move forward with the park across the street and the downtown placemaking, hardscaping, subject to having a license agreement with the bank, because I don't want to commit funds to a site where the public doesn't have a guaranteed right to use for some length of time. I'm proposing a license of 10 years. That way we have some return on that investment.
So is it like an easement with an expiration date, or is it something?
It's a license agreement, not an easement,
Okay.
because the license agreement can be executed by this body without having to go through a formal 3-step hearing process or town meeting. And it's not unlike the license agreement we have for Kendall Riverfront Park. That's a license agreement where we have 10 years use, renewable for a period of time, and it just streamlines the process.
Yeah. I just had a question, if food trucks are gonna park there, then
How would we manage it?
I would just wanna make sure that we're not running them off a diesel generator in an alley. That's all.
The concept did show a food truck option.
Yeah.
I think that's the lowest of priorities, is getting the space fitted out for
Right.
community use.
Yeah, we just wanna think through the power of that if we do go that
Yeah, the
way.
left side.
Yeah. We could try to put power there in some way
Yeah.
to support the food truck, if that were desired. So I think police radios are done, dispatch air exchange is done.
It's turned on?
It's pending. No, it's year-to-date is done. So I think it's done.
Yeah, that's been done for a while.
Yeah. The dispatch air exchange.
Yeah, I thought they said, oh, is that the fire that they were waiting on?
That's the fire.
Fire that they
Yeah.
were waiting on, you're right.
Yeah.
Dispatch, they were just waiting for the hole
Yeah.
in the wall.
Yeah. So I think that's the broad overview. With this outline, we're about 6,000 over budget. I think we have some wiggle room, but this is the target at this point, and we're marching forward. Everyone's been given clear instructions that have obligations within this to make sure our commitments, our obligations are done before the 1st of December, with a target date of having everything signed by December 15th.
Thank you. That's awesome. Very much appreciated. This is a lot to corral. So thank you. That's fantastic. Question? Yes.
May I butt in at some point? I'm sorry that I missed the closing. I got here in time, but I missed the fact that the public session was closing. I didn't get to say what I came to say.
That's fine.
If you could squeeze me in at some
Let him
point,
sit there.
I'd be very grateful.
Yes. Yes. Well, let me make sure. Any other questions, comments relative to the ARPA funding before we move on? Doug. Okay. Doug, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Doug McElroy, and my subject today is the electronic records of the town.
Okay.
We have a few years ago, we put in a new website, and all of history before that pretty well disappeared from the website, which I would say is not really a good transition. We can see select board minutes back to 2019, but once upon a time, you can see them back at least another decade. Also, the maintenance of the agendas and minutes is fairly shabby. The big four, the select board, the ZBA, the planning board, town meeting, they're all well taken care of. A few other boards are Conservation Commission, Bike Walk Committee. You'll find no minutes. Agendas sometimes, no minutes at all. And there are a fair number of other small committees that have no minutes at all. I know that some of the boards have gone and made their own little websites in Google Docs and things like that. On the Trails Committee, for example, we for a while, we had a lot of Google Docs up there, but they depend upon volunteer maintenance, and they have a way of just kind of frittering away over time. Speaking of the Trails Committee, the town does ask various subcommittees, like the Trails Committee, a subcommittee of the Conservation Commission, town does require them to keep minutes, but there's only one subcommittee I'm aware of whose minutes are on the website. That's the Energy Subcommittee. But not the Trails Committee, not the Biodiversity Committee. So I don't know why these things don't finally make I think they get submitted, but I don't know why they don't make it to the website. But I would like to urge that there is more assiduous maintenance of the website. And if more ancient history can be brought along, that would be good too. 2019 is a cutoff, almost like having a fire in the town hall. The
Yes.
records, the old records are gone. Or, I know they're not lost. I'm sure they're in a file cabinet. But this is the 21st century, and we expect them online.
Yes. Doug, we feel your pain. So we appreciate your comments. I think I'm going to ask Rob to comment, but one of the things you might have heard just quickly in the ARPA funding was this board docs. We are considering a platform that will not only allow easier posting, but also easier sharing. I think that's of course going forward, not going backwards. So I don't know with respect to the archaeology project, which is I don't know. Rob, any thoughts on that?
So I do know that the old website still exists. It's
Hidden.
hidden. So there should be a way to migrate the older records back. I also learned with board docs that we would be able to upload there was no limit on the amount of historic data from minutes and other information. And by loading it into board docs, you can actually search by word without a keyword without having to open up the set of minutes. So you could type in parking garage tax increment finance district, and it would scan everything in the archives for.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
So I mean, obviously there's a lift in getting that scanned and loaded, but it makes life much simpler than having to guess the range of the minutes, download those minutes, then search those specific minutes, which is what we're doing today.
Do you know?
Probably, if you're upgrading the website as you suggest, I would expect that that the next generation would naturally have a search capability.
It does, yeah, it does. And again, I hear you, Doug, and the challenge for us, and I'll be candid, is there is a host of subcommittees that are not statutorily addressed. And Conservation Commission has biodiversity, trails, a couple of others. And, we don't staff them. We can't staff all these subcommittees. And oftentimes the email with the minutes attached gets sent to the chair for distribution to the committee. And it's not being sent necessarily to staff to upload it to the website. In addition, we have some staff gaps in who has authority and training to access certain websites. We've cross-trained a couple, so Beth and Carrie now have shared access and management of all things Selectboard, so that if Carrie's not here, Beth can assist in loading stuff up. It's a fairly finite pool of individuals that we draw on to do this work. So I understand your concern. I did look and realize that under my watch, the Conservation Commission meetings have not been regularly updated with minutes.
You're on it though, right?
With the 11 like boards, we should probably come up with a plan for how to address the subcommittees.
Yep.
If they'll just be part of those boards, but maybe a slightly different title. Yeah.
I can try to figure that out. It's just a matter of, I will say that the workaround we did with the Zoom was, a basic meeting platform for all boards, rather than having a board with each board having their own Zoom account.
Yeah.
And so there may be a workaround that we can come up with.
Yeah, something like that.
Sorry, Doug, to keep you waiting.
Committees don't know the right place to submit the minutes to?
It's always possible. Yes, it is possible.
So that's something that could be made clear.
And there's some transition in the works. Carrie, my administrative assistant, is actually doing 2 jobs. She works at the fire department half-time and works here half-time. So we're trying to figure out how to plug that, move her full-time to the fire department and relieve her of those extra responsibilities and get a new person in. So all of these things are in a state of flux.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Next time,
Yes.
just like,
Yeah, throw something.
throw stuff at us and say, we're like, wow, he's really interested in ARPA funds, but in fact,
Well,
you're.
well timed,
Yep.
the discussions of
Yes.
Word docs.
Yep.
It was.
Yeah.
Ellen, we have warrants to sign. You want signatures on the warrants. We don't need to vote on these, just sign them, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, all right, so I'm gonna pass these around. And as we're about to transition into select board reports, but I want to turn back to the town manager. We didn't distribute this earlier, but Rob, do you have a copy of this?
Yes.
Yes, do you want to walk us through this?
Sure.
Or pass that to Jenny?
What you have before you is the announcement of Chief Dennis's retirement. The chief will be retiring effective January 1. His last employment day will be December 31st. His physical last day in the office will be the 18th of December. He'll be using some leave time between December 18th and the 31st. His letter is very thoughtful. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with him for 8+ years. And I would just like to acknowledge his unwavering commitment to the town, his team, the police department, and our shared goals, and his efforts to continue to move forward with the way we police and provide safety services in this community, whether it's, dealing with the May 1st event and learning from that and moving forward from that, to the details that they do, and interacting with the community at hockey games, football games, and other places throughout the town. So, I do want to acknowledge Charlie's commitment to this town and his commitment to excellence in policing, and simply thank him for his years of service.
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely. The relative newbie, but I think I'm very impressed by the whole accreditation process that I think he helped to spearhead, and he's impressed upon me just his ability to think about thoughtfully about multiple constituencies and be a very empathetic leader, and I think it's been a tremendous asset for Hanover. So we will miss him when he's gone.
And wish him the best of luck.
Yes.
In his next adventure in Texas.
Yes.
Yeah. Terrific. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Charlie. Let's turn now, unless you have anything else, Rob.
Nope.
Okay. To select board committee reports. Jerry?
Wait,
Nothing
did we
to
approve the,
Oh,
we have the minutes?
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, we have things to do still.
Consent
Yes,
agenda.
consent agenda, yes, we have approval of minutes, right, so let's start there, approval of minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes? No, is there a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
I move to approve the minutes as submitted.
Second. Joanna, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Consent agenda consists of three things: donations to the Etna Library and the Hanover Fire Department.
Can we pull out the banner request, please?
Certainly. Appointments to Sustainable Hanover and a banner request. So we have a revised consent agenda of items 1 and 2. Is there a motion?
I move we approve, or we accept the consent agenda, approve the consent agenda, items 1 and 2.
1 and 2, okay. Second?
Second.
Yep.
Somebody's got to read the definitions.
Yes.
Anybody have them?
I will read.
You got them?
You will read before we move, before we vote?
Oh, shoot.
Let's
We didn't
vote. Let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I would like to thank our donors. The Etna Library has received a donation in the amount of $300 from the New Hampshire Humanities Council, Inc., a donation in the amount of $2,500 from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, and a donation in the amount of $500 from the Muriel E. and Edward C. Walter Charitable Foundation. Hanover Fire Department received a 2005 Saab motor vehicle valued at $2,400, donated by Jay Whitehair for training. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's turn now to banner request from Emma Templeton and Jason Hirschhorn. There is a little bit of background here, I believe, Rob. Did you want to talk about that? Yep. And it's the last page of the packet, there is a letter from Emma and Jason.
All right.
Or it's a letter, yes. Yep.
We don't have a banner ordinance. We have banner guidelines that are in the form of instructions to the banner application. We don't have a banner policy. This particular request came in probably a month and a half ago.
Can I interrupt you, Rob? And I apologize for interrupting, but it's my understanding over the years that we've had a banner policy. I don't know if it's written down, but it was to, in general, serve nonprofit organizations in Hanover. We've allowed exceptions to nonprofits outside of Hanover that participated in Hanover areas. So I do disagree with your statement. I don't know where to look for it. And I apologize for the lack of not knowing where to look for it.
No, I know where it is. The only place, so on our website we have a place where all ordinances are hosted.
Yeah.
And on our website we have the policies.
Right.
If you type in banner request, you get a narrative in the form of almost a letter attached to the application. I would say that we can certainly table this and direct me to come up with a formal policy for banners. I guess the question is, given what you see here, is there something that causes you heartache? Is it because they're community members wishing to have a banner that says "Welcome to Hanover"?
I think the banner "Welcome to Hanover" is lovely. I don't support the use of the banner for private individuals. There's a lot of, I mean, it's a high profile area and there's a lot going on there. And I don't think it's an appropriate use of that resource.
Understood. I'm just trying to put a square peg in a square hole regarding the policy.
Well, and I think I saw somewhere that your recommendation was to perhaps revise the policy so this might be the first and last such request, approved or not. So,
But we ultimately have,
There's
we
leeway.
we ultimately have the
Yeah.
discretion as a board, right? And I mean, we've been, if there's nothing in writing for policy, we certainly have had discussions of appropriateness of banners. I think we have to be really careful in terms of First Amendment stuff. I mean, it is our banner location, so we can do that, but as a town, I think we need to be, careful, right? In terms of what can go up and what can't go up.
We
And I
have,
think
like,
you're
the-
right, Athos, to be saying, hey, this is two people who want to put something over Main Street. This is innocuous, I can't really make out what the,
I think it's just leaves.
okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not sure what, I see.
yeah.
I mean, to be sure, the banner is lovely, it's hard to object to it, but I object to the principle.
I think right now we have no commercial advertising.
Yeah.
And no sponsor logos. And I can think of a lot of messages, or I can think of a lot of times we would want to allow a banner, even if it's just from individuals and not a group. I can just imagine them in my head, not that they've come before us. So I'm not sure that we would want a policy just excluding people because they're not affiliated with a group. Does that make sense?
No.
I don't think you have
I
to.
think what we need to do is really get a banner policy, and political, I think you're getting, you mentioned, First Amendment, somebody could put up all sorts of messages that, while this one is completely, I couldn't find a soul who would object to this. It's lovely. I like the color scheme, like everything about it. But there are other messages up there that could be offensive to subsets of the population.
They don't have to be approved, though.
They don't have to be approved.
But then I think we have to be careful.
I'm not sure what you mean by careful. What do you mean by careful?
But careful by, we are allowing some but not others.
Right.
So, I mean, we have to be, I would imagine, we don't want to be parsing words, we don't want to be saying this is appropriate message or an inappropriate message.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but I'm just a little concerned about, First Amendment stuff.
I still don't understand what you're saying. I'm sorry. Say it some other way.
I'm saying that this is an innocuous message. There may be another couple of people who want to say something that is offensive to certain sectors, to,
Or groups.
women of a certain age,
Or groups.
we don't like you, or groups.
Yeah.
And I think if the policy's clear, we can say, sorry, you can't be me, But if we don't have a policy, are we withholding the rights of our citizens to, put up a sign that says something that we don't approve of?
I don't understand what you're saying.
So let me try to take a stab at it.
Yeah.
If you're going to allow signs, you don't necessarily have the legal right to regulate the content of the signs.
Thank you.
That's a US Supreme Court decision.
Okay.
So
But it might be different if it's our sign versus somebody else's
So it's a
sign.
banner.
Yeah.
In this case, we need a policy that sets the standards that are acceptable for the town to allow for the banner to go up. And I'm suggesting that you give me the opportunity to prepare that policy. And what I want to hear from the board is what the range of that policy should be, what it should be addressing. Are we looking at limiting the banners to nonprofits and other institutions like schools and
The town?
other exempt entities? Some could argue that Hanover High School can't submit if it's not a nonprofit, for example. Should we limit it to those who have a connection to Hanover, even if they're not in the town itself? Should we limit it to for-profit, perhaps, if the message is about activities that are open to the general public?
Rob, how much if we allow banners, how much can we regulate what someone is saying?
So if we write this policy, it would be, I think, I obviously have it reviewed by town council, but I think what we can do is approach it as we're empowering an entity to use our banner sign, and therefore we get to regulate the words. Because it's our sign that we're giving them the right to use.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I'm looking to you to say, what's the scope and limits that you would like me to try to address?
I think it should be pretty narrow.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think reserving the judgment, it's hard to foresee all circumstances, right? So it's, the stopgap is the select board good judgment. I can't think of instances where individuals, let me just say in full disclosure, I've gotten to know Emma and Jason a little bit, maybe others around here have as well. They're super cheerleaders for Hanover. I mean, they are bringing in like 300 guests, and they're going to be in different hotels, and like every restaurant, has been approached, and it's like, wow. It is actually an event in Hanover. So I applaud the municipal cheer and the fact that they are so behind Hanover. That's all awesome. But I share some of Office's concerns that we need to be careful, and I don't know how to write it in such a way that we can sort of, the clearer the policy is, we do still have the stopgap of the select board, but a more clear policy would probably be good. Because I can see circumstances where,
Well, we had one earlier this year.
someone embarrasses someone on their birthday or something, and I'd be mortified. Right.
Well, and we've done public service announcements, but that's been generally like, fire department says, don't forget to change your batteries, or have you checked your fire extinguisher today, or, and then we've promoted downtown events, so there's promotional stuff that, celebrate the seasons, which is the town, but it's predominantly, our downtown. So there's a lot of range if you look at what we've done for banners for the public good.
Let me take a crack at it.
We're like our own radio station.
Yeah. Let me take a crack at it. Let's see if we can get to you. And then I guess the question is, do you act on this request now, or do you table it?
It's August 2025. I think we can hunt for a few weeks, don't you think?
I just don't want to have the slot get taken if you have it by delay.
I'm sympathetic because I got to know them a little bit, and I like the good cheer, but I don't want that to unduly influence us. I could probably recuse myself. Fine, I'll recuse myself, yes.
I don't mind tabling it.
Okay.
I think you can just tell them, hey, you've raised something that we haven't really tackled. We're going to try to resolve it quickly.
No, I would even say we've never done this before. And you can go back and check our records and see if I'm wrong, but I've been watching this banners for a long time.
I can say that their first request we rejected outright.
Okay.
And they went back to the structure and retooled it and resubmitted saying, does this comply?
It's a nice message.
It's a lovely banner, okay?
Yeah,
And that's
so
my
funny.
personal opinion. Not,
You have strong feelings, it says welcome to Hanover. I don't really care.
I think welcome to Hanover is, from the vantage, particularly of Hanover, as public good as you can get.
it does set a precedent though. We've never,
that were welcoming.
I don't agree with you.
I get it, I hear what you're saying, Chris. And I mean, yeah, it's precedent.
Okay, so we're tabling it?
Yep. So we'll get you a policy as soon as possible.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks.
Thank you. So that is the last agenda item, right?
Yep.
Am I missing it? Oh, no, so
Now you're gonna do
committee
the
reports. All right, let's go to committee reports.
I have nothing to report.
Trustees of trust funds met the day after elections, did what they're supposed to do. They will they would like to come before the select board in early January, I think it is, to let us know, or it might even be next month, to let us know what the funds available from the Brissette funds may be. And do you want to give a quick update, Ellen? Thank you.
Yeah, the next trustees meeting is January 14th, so it would follow that.
Follow that, and that's when we determine what has happened with the Brissette funds and how much would be available for us to consider in our budgeting process. And before that date, there'll be an application for you to review.
Great. That's really helpful.
And kind of what can be and how we would make that available to the general public, and kind of this group deciding, you know, how is that? Is it something that's posted on the website so community members know, or nonprofits can apply for the money, or if it's, we're going to keep it internally. So I think there's some work that has to be done, and ideally I would do that before the end of the year, because I agreed to put together the application, which there is a draft, and it's just more of, I think the intent of the trustees are to make sure that, like the Bridgman funds, it's an acknowledged fund for the good of the community, and, you know, because that's what the people who endowed these funds, that was their intent, and that the funding is made available, that everyone knows it exists, and then the select board to have the ultimate decision as to how it should be spent based on these guidelines that were outlined in the trust documents. And then our trustees will say, okay, it was a good year, here's 150,000, not so good, 0, you know, whatever. So they'll give us a range in end of January.
That's great.
And then the other really cool thing, this actually speaks to Brissette funds, which the select board allocated funding of this very amazing partnership between the town, the Hanover Improvement Society, Dartmouth College, and the Friends of Oak Hill. They had a big turning on the lights at Oak Hill's outdoor center on Friday. And so it was a thank you for all the partners. And highlighting like the wide array. I mean, it's really, in fact, I was talking to someone today, it's a case study in partnerships and creating something that's amazing that the town helped make happen, the college helped make happen, the Fort Sayre ski community helped make happen, the Hanover Improvement Society. It's like 2 property owners, you know, Dartmouth and Hanover Improvement Society,
Right at the race school.
Right behind the race school and the middle school, and actually there were all kinds of skiers who have, you know, internationally Olympians there, and a lot of people from the Nordic ski community saying that this is one of the most amazing things happening in the country right now in terms of partnerships. And Tracy's was on the Fort Sayre Council at the time, big Nordic. So it was an amazing event, and it was really magical at Oak Hill. After the thank yous happened and town was highlighted, everyone went out on the stadium. There was a countdown, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they turned on the lights, and it was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing skiing. And it's just an incredible recreational opportunity. And I think, you know, downtown is going to reap benefits just because you're gonna see people coming in, and we all will be able to ski till 8 at night under lights if you want to on
And there are
week-
signs,
midweeks.
wayfinding signs.
And wayfinding signs
When
and
does it go on? Does it go on in the morning at all?
I don't know if they're doing morning. I know that midweek it goes at 8, they turn off at 8 during the week, and I think 9 on the weekends. I don't know if they're gonna have lights on in the morning. But anyway, it was really, it's an amazing thing, and kudos for everyone and for the board for supporting, through the percent funds, supporting some of the initial seed money, so pretty cool.
Terrific.
And
Thank you.
Sustainability Committee meets Wednesday morning here.
Since we last met, well, first of all, we had the election, and a huge shout out to all of our poll workers. I mean, it was, I think, an amazing output of good spiritedness and teamwork to pull off how many? 1,200 plus same day registrations?
About 1,100.
1,100. Awesome. It was fantastic. So. Hanover Finance Committee met on Thursday, the 7th of November, and Ellen was in attendance. Actually, Rob stopped by, thank you. And really, it was just kind of an update on some of the memoranda that Ellen had put out. I did have a chance to sit down with Ellen for the first manifest review, so that was fun. You guys will all get a chance to do that. We gave it a test run, so yeah, you should schedule them up, Ellen.
I definitely will. I'll send out a sign-up sheet.
Yeah, okay. Yes, it's amazing how many bills we pay, and it's a big operation, so thank you. Aside from that, we do have a CIPC meeting coming up this Friday, and I thought I would, do you want to pass this around? Okay, so, and I will let Jenny talk to this, but she took a stab at redoing our objectives and key results. Do you want to talk about that now? Sure, okay. So you'll recall the last meeting, Jenny wanted to spearhead a reordering, which is done, so the Hanover Sustainability Master Plan is a key objective area number 1. I think you did add some the asterisk items, which is not in this instance an expletive, but rather highlighting the fact that those are additions to or changes to the language. Is that right, Jenny?
Yes. Yes, this asterisks are added.
So 3 key results, which include pass zoning reform at town meeting, pass updated complete streets policy, develop a shared streets plan, you had added, and I think with respect to the last key result under fiscal transparency, you added to actually count the number of comments from engaged community members during the budget process. And I think there were a couple of things. I didn't print your comment field, so sorry about that. But
That was good. It would be too small if you did.
Okay.
I like the format, Jenny. It's nice.
I
Yes.
kept the color palette.
Yes, it's much easier to read. Thank you. So yeah, so take a look at this. I don't think we necessarily have to talk about it right now. I mean, I think on some of this, the questions that I have under the 3 additions under the first one are authority of the select board with authority, accountability.
I'm sorry.
So
Pass zoning reform.
Pass zoning reform. Is that really us? And then on the
That's town meeting.
that's town meeting.
Town
Yeah.
meeting passes it. So that would be the key result that we're looking for. And the idea is that we're setting up a way to enable our master plan implementation. So these are enabling goals, and then like a stab at, well, what could we measure when you come down to, like, maybe we could pick, like, if we really want to engage people, do we want to shoot for some sort of goal for engagement? Because it seems like something we could measure if we wanted to. We don't need to. But the idea of, we did all this work coming up with a
master plan, and we talked about it actually a bit, and there's certain aspects that we need to do in order to enable the rest of the plan to work. And one of those things is to work on our zoning, which is why we did all those octopus studies and meetings and playing around with a piece of paper and all that. So, and to the extent that we will need to do outreach, I want to make sure that our board is also focused on what it means to enable this type of change, whether that means we're, offering support, organizing meetings. I mean, I think
So
underpins the plan.
that's where I guess I want to drill down as to what can we, I mean, I think of this as a P and Z effort. I mean, yes, it's a town meeting, but it's not in the sort of business portion. It's on the ballot.
But yeah, we could just put it on the ballot and not do much to support it, or we could talk about how we're gonna support this. That's exactly right, and I think it's, when we're talking about key results, you wanna think about coming up with something that matters, right? So we are focusing our efforts and have these goals that are driving where our focus is.
I guess I'm looking for the next level, like host a forum, to discuss, to engage voters or something like that. And I just don't know if is that our business to do? Talk about zoning changes, or is that a different body's to-do list? I mean, this support, I like it, but I don't know what it means in practice.
I need to think about this.
Yeah.
I'm not, it's too late
Yeah.
for me.
Okay, so why don't we come back to it?
Is that okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Office, anything?
No, I missed the Conservation Commission meeting. Rob, were you there? It was at 4 o'clock. I couldn't make it.
I was actually in another meeting. Jenny and Alex were there.
Yeah, I was there. So I went to the the Sustainable Hanover Energy Subcommittee.
Okay.
Speaking of partnerships, the community power is going really well and has saved over $500,000 for users, $643,000 just in energy costs. And they're rolling it out wider. They're adding a bunch more towns coming up. Super impressive. They're also engaged with helping the Dartmouth undergrad do research. You might have noticed on our town website, they're looking for people who have heat pumps to give them information about how their heat pumps are working so that they can evaluate that type of energy reduction. We talked about how this LED street lamps are all in except for 12, and there's a path forward on the downtown street lights, which take a different light bulb. And Pete has assured us that we have already seen big savings. He's already, even not only just from the LED, but he's also now turned them down some too. So we'll have even more savings. And then Yolanda did a super interesting analysis of the solar capacity in town based on the permits that people have taken out. And we are generating 6.3 megawatts. Not enough to go back to the future, but
Flux capacity.
yeah, and that the majority of that is from households. So it's
Megawatts
per year. So 670 something kilowatts to power at home, and we are producing 6.3 megawatts. And so Dartmouth is producing like 25% of that. The town with its big solar array is producing 33%, and 42% are from residences, including 2 apartment buildings. So I thought that was super cool. Hanover Bike Walk, the exciting news is West Wheelock will be continuously 25 miles an hour. It won't seem schizophrenic as you're going from 25 to 30 to 25 anymore, and there's been...
There'll be fewer signs.
There are fewer signs, and there's even a fewer signs indicating that there is a bike lane rather than the bike lane ends. So that is very exciting news. The Conservation Commission, I'm actually wondering if there's policies on remembrances. I couldn't find any, but so that's something I'll follow up with you about if they're dealing with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. There is no policy, and the issue is how do we want to regulate how people use public lands for memorials?
Yes, we do.
Yes. And that's a policy that you'll see in the near future.
Yes. So that, yes. And the Conservation Commission, as always, through their various subcommittees and others, are working like gangbusters, organizing groups of 6 to 9 people to clear old sugar houses, to clear old logs, to clear culverts, and they're trying to get a couple more big projects in before winter. And they held a forestry workshop. It was co-hosted with the HOW. It was crazy well attended, online and in person, and it's all about basically in New England, like 80% of the forests are owned by individuals, or families, and it's hard to get carbon credits for growing old forests. But there were 3 companies presenting on how you can do it through them. They basically aggregate them and allow you to, even with relatively smaller parcels, I think down to like 40 acres, people can earn carbon credits. And so it was about that and the importance of old growth, how one big old tree is equal to like 40 other trees. And there's lots of other good information, and they have all of the pamphlets, and I think they recorded the Zoom.
Yeah, I think it's available.
Yeah. And yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you. Rob, anything else?
No.
Do we have need for a non-public?
No.
Yay!
Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Yeah, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Crowd went wild.
Yes. Said the magic words.
I just want you to know that I sent this to Charlie today. And I can
Oh, okay, all right.
and I have copies.
Do you guys want copies of Rob's